evening. Welcome to Have I Got News for You? I'm Martin Clunes. In the news this week, on his way to 11 Downing Street, Britain's new Chancellor of the Exchequer demonstrates a worrying problem with numbers. After losing his seat in the election, the night gets worse for Labour's defeated Health and Safety Minister.
Thank you.
And at his first cabinet meeting, after sitting in a trance for 20 minutes, David Cameron shocks ministers as he announces the new position of President for Life. On Ian's team is a journalist for The Express who recently appeared on BBC Two's The Bubble, for which she spent 3 days without access to television, internet or newspapers. Pretty much like being a journalist in the Express offices. Please welcome Julia Hartley Brewer. And on Paul's team is a writer, stand-up comedian and actor who says the most important advice is never to drink before you go on stage. Tosser. Please welcome Chris Addison. And we start with the big story of the week. Take a look at this.
Oh, Tory Dream Team.
A terrible remake of Reservoir Dogs.
They're being arrested.
There's a purple party. This must be from some other country.
Oh, that's the Browns with the Miliband brothers. That's...
Well, there's another Miliband brother in there.
Copy the feel.
Grope of the boob.
This is very good news. It's the first gay couple to run Britain. I'm excited. I'm very excited by this.
Did you see that press conference?
Yeah.
Where they said, I am what I am, and what I am needs no excuses.
I was at the press conference, and that is pretty much what was said.
It did look like the dullest civil partnership of
Did
all
it?
time.
Really?
I was thinking, get to the cake and the disco.
Yeah.
That's what people really want.
Really poor.
But it could be a very exciting day for politics. Where there is darkness, we'll bring light. Where there is heat, we will bring cold. Where there is hope, we will bring despair.
No, what I love, though, is David Cameron's been so statesmanlike through this, you know, this big offer of this coalition, and it was all looking so good, and he sees the Queen, and then he turns up on Downing Street, stands on the steps with his wife, and gropes her boob. He's just went
He's just won an election, kind of.
Yeah. So now she's got to give out?
Well, that's why he only went for the one boob. If he got a majority, he could have gone...
What embarrassing question was David Cameron asked at his joint press conference?
Oh, this was genius.
Let's have a look.
Prime Minister, do you now regret when once asked what your favourite joke was, you replied, Nick Clegg? And Deputy Prime Minister, what do you think of that?
We're all going to have. I'm afraid I did
Oh, genius.
At least he said it was his favourite joke.
You know, the whole thing, though, really reminded me... Do you remember that interview Charles and Diana did when they just got engaged? And they said, you know, the interviewer said, and you were in love? And she went, oh, yes. And Prince Charles said, oh, well, whatever love means, whatever love is. And that whole press conference was like that.
Whatever a coalition is.
But I hear the sort of journalists now are quite keen to prize these two apart, because it doesn't seem right. That seems to be the sort of view, doesn't it? That this is the journalism's prime role now is to prize these two apart and show the differences between them. Would you agree with that, Julia?
I think so. There's quite a lot of differences, otherwise they'd probably be in the same party.
But that's how coalitions work. I don't understand why journalists don't appear to be able to see what the definition of a coalition is. Those two people don't appear to be in the same party. How can they be in a coalition? It wouldn't be a coalition if they're in the same party. It'd be a majority government, you thick bunch of bastards.
Yeah, what I love, though, is this supposed to be the new politics. This is supposed to be like this massive coalition and all these different forces of British public. Great, so we've got someone from Eton and someone from Westminster.
On that subject, how did Bozza Johnson describe the potential coalition between the Tories and the Lib Dems earlier this week?
He said it was like a cross between a bulldog and a chihuahua, when he meant to say it's like a cross between a bulldog and a shih tzu, which would be a bullshit.
Here's a little clip of him giving incisive comment.
Whatever type of wall sausage
is contrived by this great experiment. The dominant ingredient has got to be conservatism. The meat in the sausage has got to be conservative, I would say. There can be plenty of bread and other bits and pieces.
You can find that clip on the internet, but please be warned, just typing Boris Johnson and sausage.
I'm all for this coalition. I like the idea that it neutralises the loonies on both wings. It looks quite good so far. I'm sure you've all read the agreement. It's only 12 pages. Come on! No ID cards, changes on tax. Let's have a referendum now. Day one, what do you think? Pretty good? Just me, then.
And how did The Sun cover this in a measured and balanced way?
Did they say...
Yes! Put a half-naked woman on page 3.
Yeah. Nicola, 27 from Peterborough...
Shows her party rosettes.
Well, here's how they announced the historic coalition. First, Mr Cameron's bit. There you go. Yeah. And here's Nick's bit. There you go.
To be fair, though, I mean, he's going to be Deputy Prime Minister. I mean, Deputy Prime Minister is such a non-job. No one's done the job for 3 years.
I think the key is here that they look like each other. Because Clegg will walk in one day pretending to be Cameron, get a few things done. Miliband becomes leader of the Labour Party, you won't be able to tell the difference between any of them.
Yeah. He could actually sneak in and start running the country and nobody'd notice.
Yeah.
Big jobs. Who's going to get them, yes?
Vince Cable's in there.
Theresa May is Home Secretary, which is typical Tories giving a woman a secretarial post.
I have to say, George Osborne being the Chancellor, I reckon I'm all right on that front. My own personal tax bill would not be going up because 20 years ago, I bought George Osborne in a slave auction. And, George, if you're watching, if you raise my taxes, I will tell everyone what I made you do.
Wow.
You're going to have to tell us now.
No, I'm holding
Just
it over
us.
the Chancellor.
Just us here.
I waited 20 years for some bloke who was a couple of years below me at college, who we called Tory boy, to become important enough that I could use this. I'm not giving it away to you. Come
God,
on.
you spot them early, don't you?
This slave auction, did he enter this? Was he a willing participant in this slave auction, George?
Yeah, it was for charity, yeah. I was bought as well.
Who bought you?
I can't remember who bought me. It
What
was,
did he-
it
can you
was a
remember what
long
he
time
made you
ago.
do?
It was at university. How sober was I? Come on. I bought George Osborne. How sober was I?
Well, he will put up your taxes. They're going to go up.
Oh, well, then the story comes out. It's up to you, George.
William Hague is now the Foreign Secretary, although he does seem to have changed his image somewhat.
Oh, he dreams of having that much hair.
That was a key demand of the Lib Dems.
Did he dress like that?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. He's got sandals on under there as well.
It was a week when 24-hour breaking news really came into its own. Let's have a look.
Are you expecting this by this evening to be an opposition MP, or do you think you'll still be a government MP?
John, you know, I've got no idea.
Does that give you the stable government that you will require to address all the key things that need to be actually addressed?
I don't know.
What progress is being made in the talks, do you think?
I'm going to defend this idea.
It's just reminded me, you can't say that Deputy PM is a non-job. I mean, Prescott had it.
It's a knob job.
It's been great to watch journalists just go insane with lack of sleep. Nick Robinson was blinking so much towards the end. I genuinely thought he was getting so angry that the Tories weren't being given a majority. I genuinely thought he was going to rip off his shirt in the middle of Downing Street and go, "This is it!" and run towards the door. Get me in there! I'll run it myself!
What have the two parties had to compromise on?
Tax, Trident. How long a list do you want?
Keep it going, they can edit stuff out if it's boring. The Tories have agreed to have a referendum on the subject of electoral reform. Did anybody see how John Prescott dealt with that issue earlier this week?
If you put together all of the numbers between Labour, the Liberal Democrats and any of the others that come into a coalition deal, that only just gets you...
Can you keep your mouth shut for the moment, love?
Love.
No, the brilliant thing was, when they interviewed her afterwards, she said, well, at least he didn't punch me.
Kay Burley also got heckled on the Sky News. Have a look at this clip, but don't pay attention to the people in the foreground. Listen to the heckling. It's better.
However, the Prime Minister's gone up to Scotland, at least for now. The other two main parties are gathering. How do you get together and try and organise some sort of polling as far as this is concerned? Will you be polling?
Is that what the Director General does these days?
But why do they take them all outside and expose them to this? There's this whole trend.
Because it's funnier.
No, I suppose it is funny.
You're not really there unless you're standing in the rain or the wind.
Yelled at.
They have the first time anyone has said, watch the BBC on Sky.
As the various negotiating teams scuttled backwards and forwards to come up with a solution, what headlines did the papers go for?
We don't know what's happening. We haven't a clue.
Don't bother reading us.
Let's leave them to sort it out and then report the news afterwards.
Here's the Times. They went with voters tell Brown to quit as Cameron races to secure deal. Telegraph opted for a nation in limbo. And the Daily Star got straight to the point with sort it out, you clowns. The Guardian got to the nub of the matter with a fascinating insight into the behind-the-scenes talks between the Tories and the Lib Dems. They revealed what was eaten during negotiations.
Oh. Eton was the school that David Cameron went to. That's what it was the rest of the time.
While the Tories ate chicken and beef sandwiches, the Lib Dems' filling of choice was tuna. And in case you're not sure what a sandwich looks like, they very helpfully gave us a picture of one. Labour also approached the Lib Dems with an offer of a rainbow coalition, not to be confused with Rainbow, the television show, as Bungles just resigned.
Although George has just got in.
Does anybody know why talks between the Lib Dems and Labour failed?
No, it was ballsed up, quite literally. Ed Balls ballsed it up and came in a bit too... Yeah, he came in a bit too sort of... Came in a bit hard, is that all right? And
as long as you're not talking sexually, yeah.
I just think it was ridiculous. They were like, Clegg was just going between the two of them, just trying to get a bit more and a bit more and a bit more.
But isn't that what negotiating is? I don't understand why journalists find this so hard to understand. What was Nick Clegg doing? Yeah. How dare he try to secure the best possible deal for his party? What is wrong with you people?
Because he's saying it's all about the country.
Inane question.
Because he's saying it's all about the country.
Of course he's saying it's all about the country, because you people would be right on a piece of jacksie if he didn't, wouldn't you? If he actually said, well, this is actually about politics and this is how politics works, you bunch of 4-year-olds. Then you wouldn't be having any of it.
Well, we wouldn't have
As it is, you're not having any of it.
Who's not having any of it?
Well, I'm not.
Oh, right.
I don't really feel this is the forum in which to discuss that.
Also, according to The Sun, David Blunkett didn't help by saying, can we really trust the Lib Dems? They're behaving like every harlot in history. Got him on his special subject there. But... It's been a week of high drama, historic developments and cliché journalism, and as feelings ran high, did anybody see the massive embarrassment on Sky News, or Adam Bolton, as he's called? Let's have a look at this live interview beside Alistair Campbell when Labour were trying to reach an agreement with the Lib Dems.
This is just like rolling news. This is great. Yeah. Can we go over to someone now and lose the sound?
Just one moment. You have to press play and record. What, that long-ass sentence? God. OK.
It's awful being an actor, isn't it?
Nobody understands.
You should try speaking clearer.
And as feelings ran high, did anybody see the massive embarrassment on Sky News, or Adam Bolton, as he's known?
Adam, you're obviously upset that David Cameron's not Prime Minister.
I'm not upset.
You are. You probably are.
Calm down. Don't keep casting aspersions on what I think.
Calm down.
I am commenting. Don't keep saying what I think.
This is live on television.
No, don't keep telling me what I think. This is what you do. You come on and say, no one won the election. No, don't. You talk to me. I'm fed up with you telling me what I think.
I don't care what you're fed up with. You can think what you like. I can tell you my opinion.
Don't tell me what I think.
I will tell you why I think you'll react.
Alistair, you're being
badly.
very...
No, I'm not,
you are being...
He was so concerned about our procedures.
You, totally unelected, have plotted this.
Me?
With yeah.
What, and you're elected?
You're up here speaking about him. No, but he's.
No, but that's because the minister's going to a cabinet meeting.
He's got a parliamentary party. You're the one who cocked it up. You're the one who's cooked this up with Peter Mandelson.
Let this debate carry on later.
Calm down.
Let's just remind you what Gordon Brown said a few minutes ago that seems to have led to this latest round of the debate. This is Gordon Brown's statement.
Ofcom are investigating over 300 complaints about
All from Adam Bolton.
That's amazing. 300 people watch Sky. He looks phenomenal.
Alistair does bring that out in you, though.
It's a gift, though, isn't he? He's good at it.
But fancy being involved in an argument with Alistair Campbell and you ending up being the one who goes mad and looks like a lunatic. I mean, that is traditionally Campbell's job. He's also suggesting that Sky is biased. What's new? He used to say the BBC was biased and then went bonkers and tried to close it down. This is what Alistair does. Or did.
Oh, no, does.
With any luck, we're not going to see him anymore. Bye-bye, Alistair. Bye-bye, Mandy.
They're hosting the show next week.
As you say, Gordon Brown has gone, and as a special treat, let's do our caption competition nice and early.
Yeah.
Brown and the Queen.
She's saying, about bloody time, I've not been able to nip out from milk since last Thursday. I'm absolutely gasping.
Is she saying, I'm sorry, but Prince Charles thinks he's a lampshade at the moment?
And what about this?
Bloody hell, you've regenerated.
I think she's saying, gotcha! Finally, there's this.
Is it 3, 4, YMCA?
Siamese twats. Do you know what Alistair Campbell gave to Gordon Brown just before he stepped out to make his resignation speech?
Was it a wedgie?
No! You know, he
Was it a leaving present?
Yes, it was his red tie. Gordon wanted to wear a red tie when he said goodbye, and Alistair was the only one wearing one.
So he took it off?
He took it off and nobly gave it to his leader, former leader.
Right. You sure it wasn't a suggestion he hang himself?
Red tie made entirely of rope.
Yes, I noticed that. The people behind the attempt to form a Lib-Lab coalition were Mandelson, Campbell and Lord Adonis.
Wasn't it the unelected, the unelectable, and...
The other fuckers.
Yes, and...
We've actually made our own tribute to Gordon. And to use a well-known phrase, let's take a look at his best bits.
Thank you, and goodbye.
Gordon Brown has gone. He's done the decent thing.
He's not done the decent thing.
He has. He stepped aside.
Well, no, but not immediately. No, doing the decent thing would have been on Friday morning.
You don't talk about barnacles stepping aside when you chip them off.
Again, what was he supposed to do? Constitutionally, he was the Prime Minister. It was his job to stay on until another government could possibly be formed.
No, he was going to stay on until October.
You don't understand how the country works.
No, you do.
No.
Threatening to leave your party in 6 months' time and saying, I will sort out the deal, so I will hang on that long, is not constitutional.
No, but
that is an attempt to cling on to power. That is Mr. Barnacle doing what he does. It's no good saying, I hate journalists because they happen to be critical of this particular thing. That's just cobblers.
No, I don't understand.
The party
I hate journalists.
with the most votes had the chance to form the party.
He was very nice to me in the dressing room.
Well, that's the Chrissy special.
When he finally resigned, I think, for the first time, he looked genuinely happy.
Yeah.
And for me, that was the first time he'd reflected the public mood.
Gordon has done the decent thing. He's stepped aside, so it's time for a more thoughtful reflection on the high points of Gordon's political career.
Oh, please.
No, I know. Do you see Wednesday's Mirror? It actually had a pull-out tribute section with Gordon. But it was Britain's 52nd Prime Minister. I thought you've missed out a word there. Worst.
52nd worst? That makes him literally the best, doesn't it?
Time now for a quick-fire Gordon Brown round. Fingers on buzzers, teams. There have been allegations that Gordon can be quite bad-tempered. What technique does his aides develop to give him bad news?
They ran out the door first.
Was it through a friendly psychic? At a séance?
Is there somebody here with a £163 billion deficit?
They developed a technique called the news sandwich, where they'd start off by first telling the Prime Minister about a recent piece of good coverage, then they would deliver some bad news, and moving on quickly to tell him about something good that was coming up soon. It's also a technique that the Queen was exposed to this week. Gordon Brown's quitting. He's on his way to see you. He'll be gone soon. How did Gordon Brown take responsibility for the Damien McBride smear scandal?
Well, he said, I take responsibility, I'll find out who it is and sack them.
Let's have a look at him.
I take full responsibility for what happens. That's why the person who was responsible went immediately.
One of the smears involved a photo of George Osborne allegedly wearing stockings and suspenders. In fact, in the recent negotiations, the Lib Dems dropped their demands to get rid of Trident in return for seeing that photo.
Who would want to see that photo?
Well, you bought him as a slave.
Yeah. What question did Gordon refuse to answer on the influential Mumsnet website?
What kind of biscuit he liked. He couldn't remember or couldn't decide or didn't want to say because he didn't want to offend anybody in case there had to be coalition talks afterwards.
That's right. Took 24 hours for him to come back and say he liked the chocolatey ones. Where and when was this picture taken?
Was it at the coalition talks?
Afghanistan.
Yes, Little Heathrow in Afghanistan.
Little Heathrow? So there is a third runway.
That's been taken off.
Oh, what, they're not going to build the third runway?
No, the third runway's been dumped.
My arse.
Is that where they're decided?
There's too many rich people getting rich out of that. They won't stop that.
Oh,
well, it'd be
such
good to see it.
cynicism is a thing of the past, Martin.
Yeah, these are the new politics.
Yeah, you don't tell him off, do you?
He's not a journalist. He, like me, is just an ill-informed bystander.
Barely literate. And here he is in Afghanistan trying to shake someone's hand. Foreigners, don't you hate them? Here's a similar moment outside number 10. Do you think he was telling him off? He was going, you shouldn't have shaken his hand. Don't shake mine. How did a Heathrow protester upset Gordon in 2008?
Did he book him into Terminal 5?
No, he glued himself to his sleeve. The same protester tried the same thing on Peter Mandelson, but nothing sticks to that slippery. Which television show rejected Gordon Brown from appearing?
Match of the Day 2.
Match of the Day, yeah.
What, did he ask to be on?
Yeah.
Wraith Rovers were playing that week, were they?
Are they good?
They're Scottish, so presumably not. I know nothing about football. I literally nothing about football. All I know is that Scottish football is to real football as pepper army is to meat.
That's very clear. Yes, they turned him down as a guest as it was too close to the election. However, that didn't stop him leaving this message for its presenter, Adrian Chiles, when he left the One Show.
Adrian, I think I last had a long talk with you at the Olympics when you did such a marvellous job as a presenter there. But you've done amazing things on the One Show, on sports, on everything else you've done in reporting. And you've simply done a great job that makes us all very proud. I mean, when we talk and meet, you talk about West Bromwich Albion all the time, and I talk about Wraith Rovers all the time.
Lovely. This is an historic week in which all of that stuff we've just been talking about has happened. Mirror journalist Jason Beattie wrote, Cameron is our 53rd Prime Minister, but for how long? Forever, dickhead. The next one will be the 54th. Earlier in the election campaign, the Daily Mail slurred Nick Clegg by suggesting he was sympathetic to the Nazis. A headline which, in the end, made the coalition easier to sell to some of the dyed-in-the-wool Tories. David Cameron kicked off negotiations with the Lib Dems by making them an offer which he called big, open and comprehensive. First time he's used the word comprehensive without adding the word oik. At one stage, there was talk of Labour and the Lib Dems, the SNP, Plaid Cymru, the SLDP, dear bollocks.
You were doing so well!
No wonder nobody
Is that
voted
a party
for
now?
them. Yeah, bloody
Blur,
is.
blur, bollocks?
Yes. I don't think they noticed. I'll go again. At one stage, there was talk of Labour, the Lib Dems, the SNP, Plaid Cymru, the SDLP, the Alliance and the Greens all joining together to form a rainbow coalition. Well, there'd been a crock of something at the end of it. As the Tories' failure to win a majority forced them to seek a coalition, several newspapers went with the headline, Deal or No Deal. Particularly upsetting reference to David Cameron, who keeps getting irate phone calls from the banker Lord Ashcroft. At this key moment in British politics, a lot of attention's being paid to the smaller parties. But let's not forget the smallest party of all, Gordon's farewell drinks. Shut up. So, at the end of that round, it's Ian and Julia with 4 big points, and Paul and Chris have 4 big points.
4 big points as well, that's very
good. What a nice man.
Yeah, I'm that. So this is going to be the final gadget.
Right do. And so, to round 2.
Only round 2?
Why is it going... It's going backwards. That just makes me look a tit. I'm going to swing for you in a minute.
I don't think this acting thing's going to work out for you, Martin.
Oh, I know why. I know why I'm looking like a tit. Yes. Here we go. All right. Yes, applause. And so, to round 2, the one-armed bandit of news. Fingers on your buzzers, teams. Here's the first one.
Fired. Mohammed Al Fayed. He's the owner of Harrods, and he sold it to the Qatari royal family for £1.5 billion. So from now on, Harrods is going to be completely different. He's dressed up as a pharaoh there.
Pharaohs were well known for wearing lounge suits.
Oh, they did. This particular one, Tutankhamun.
He's got a wonderful ego there. But you've got to admire the ego. He's got a fabulous ego. I went up and introduced myself to him once as a journalist, and he went, oh, yes, 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 grabbed my pad of paper and gave me his autograph and handed it back to me.
What do we know about the new owner, Sheikh Hamad bin Khalifa bin Hamad Abdullah bin Jassim bin Mohammed Al Thani?
It's from Galway.
He's the head of the Qatari royal family who've bought Al Fayed's shop. He has 27 children from 3 wives, and 15 years ago, he deposed his father, who was on holiday in Switzerland at the time. He sounds nice, doesn't he? Mohammed Al Fayed's always been a lot of fun. What did we learn his favourite trick was?
Does he jump out of cupboards shouting at people?
According to the Mail on Sunday, he likes to offer people smints and tell them that they're Viagra. Not a soft mint, then. See what I've done there? Yes. By way
How
of
would
a
be
joke.
fooled into thinking that Viagra had a delicious minty taste and made your breath good?
He doesn't need Viagra.
He's a wonderful man.
He's got an escalator that goes to the top floor.
Yeah, and when you get there, you need brandy.
Yeah, but you must carry a small dog. Up an escalator.
Actually, you have to carry your dog in Harrods at all times. I took my dog to Harrods once. I bunked off school and took her to Harrods, but I had to carry her. That's about as interesting as that story gets. He's clearly a successful businessman. What do we know about his methods?
IUD coil? No.
He's not a gynaecologist.
Whatever he might have told you.
His other friend explained, Al-Fayed isn't really a businessman. He ever attended a board meeting. He would just wander in at the end of them and say, so is anything happening, or are you just still playing with yourselves? This is the news that Mohammed Al-Fayed has offloaded Harrods. The new Qatari owner bought Harrods for £1.5 billion. If only he'd hung on to the sales, he could have got it for £1.5 billion. Qatar Holdings chairman is Sheikh Hamad bin Jassim bin Jabbar Al Thani, which by the time you add licence to sell intoxicating spirits won't quite fit on the sign above the door, will it? Shall I get rid of this before I put fingers on buzzers?
No, that's all right, keep that.
We like that? OK.
I think so.
It's bugging me, that's all. Fingers on buzzers, teams. Here's the next one. Oh, I see.
Yeah. When you win a play, are you always surprised by how it finishes?
Shut your face.
Have you ever been in a play where the phone suddenly rings and it shouldn't be ringing? I saw that once, and an actor went over. Everybody suddenly looked at the phone, startled. You know, they'd never seen a phone ringing before. And one of the actors just went over to it, picked it up, and said, "It's for you." This is people sitting outside a public library.
That's right.
Yeah, that's all I know about it.
Is it?
Yeah.
This is a library in King's Lynn,
where the goblins live.
In Norfolk. And they're employing bouncers to keep the peace. Do we know why?
They're throwing people in. Knowledge!
Nobody know? They've called bouncers in to protect the staff from unruly children. Or, in other words, children. And what sort of things are the adorable little tykes accused of?
They're not trying to take books out, are they?
According to a local county councillor, children would not only run around, but also make a lot of noise.
Would they put their hands in the air like they just don't care?
And how did the Express bring balance to this story in their headline?
Burn the library down!
Says Diana through Medium.
No, they ran with, library hires a bouncer to bring yobbos to book. Message board's been going crazy about this. King's Lynn really is a hellhole. Most of the population have an IQ which barely reaches double figures. It's full of antisocial and loutish behaviour. It is depressing, which is why I'll be moving to more rural Norfolk as soon as possible. I'm Norfolk born and bred, but this town really is the backside of Norfolk. Well, that's cleared that up. Other crime-related news this week. What have 500 officers won the right to do?
Celebrate pagan festivals.
Yes!
There is the Pagan Police Association who want to celebrate about 12 or so pagan festivals a year, including the Feast of the Lactating Sheep. It's very important, that's where we get feta. It's more a middle-class ceremony, to be honest.
One officer, who didn't want to be named, said, what's it come to when a cop gets time off so he can sit about making spells or dance around the place drinking honey beer with a wand in his hand?
So much political correctness gone mad as PC's gone mad. Hang your own, mate.
What can pagan police look forward to celebrating in February 2011?
I think it might be the lactating sheep thing.
You're absolutely bloody right. It's Imbolc, the Festival of the Lactating Sheep, which is actually the name of a pub in King's Lynn. This is a library in Norfolk, or as the locals call it, the Magic Word House, which has had to hire bouncers to deal with unruly children. And this week, pagan police have won the right to take days off to celebrate their festival. Here's a pagan policeman. Time now for the odd one out round. Fingers on buzzers, teams. They are Gordon Brown, Delia Smith's seafood risotto, tennis player Robert D, and a dish of hummus in the Lebanon.
Yes, now, Gordon Brown, during the election by, I think, a member of the Labour Party, was described as the worst Prime Minister ever. Delia Smith's seaside risotto was described as absolutely disgusting. Roger D, was it, the tennis player, British tennis player, he was accused of being the worst ever tennis professional, but I think he sued successfully and proved he wasn't.
No, he was unsuccessful. I thought you were allowed to describe him as the worst tennis professional now, because he just He lost every match, isn't that right?
Record-breaking 54 straight set losses on the professional circuit.
And it was only on the Wii.
A run that propelled him to numbers.
So it's about things being the worst thing in the world. So those three are the worst at what they do, and the hummus is the best. So that's the odd one out.
It's pretty good. It's not quite the best. They've all been described as the worst of their kind, apart from the big bowl of hummus in the Lebanon, which has been described as the largest of its kind. This week, a team of 300 Lebanese chefs broke the world record for the biggest bowl of hummus ever made.
Well, that's enough to feed Hampstead for 2 days.
It took 300 chefs to prepare the dish, and if you want to imagine what 300 chefs look like, just turn on your telly and channel hop for a couple of minutes. It's part of the ongoing hummus war between Lebanon and Israel, yes. Lebanon claims that Israel is stealing traditional Arab dishes and marketing them worldwide as Israeli. Their latest effort beat the record set by Israel in January of this year.
You don't want to be taking Israel on in a war.
And it's a bit near to Hamas, really, isn't it?
Last week, Labour candidate Manish Sood announced that Britain was in a mess and that the worst Prime Minister ever was Gordon Brown. Luckily for his party, the eccentric Mr Sood was standing as a candidate in a place where Labour didn't have a hope in hell of winning. Britain. Fans of the nation's favourite cook, Delia Smith, have described her recipe for seafood risotto as the worst risotto they have ever tasted.
Because usually her recipes are praised because people say the recipes work very well, but this it didn't. So people sort of like created this risotto thing and they had to sort of put it into bin liners and take it to the end of the garden and
Yes.
bury it. And...
Yeah, visitors to the Waitrose website described it as nauseating, offensively fishy and repugnant. And according to one reviewer, the entire meal went in the bin and we all had toast instead. We then had to put the bin bag at the bottom of the garden because of the revolting smell. They've all been described as the worst of their kind, apart from the dish of hummus, which was this week recognised as the largest ever. The gigantic dish enabled Lebanon to take back the world record for the largest hummus from Israel. Israel now plan to take the record by moving in and claiming the Lebanese one as their own. Time now for the Missing Words round, which this week features as its guest publication, It's Fate magazine. Well, we were bound to have it one day. Somebody wrote that.
Somebody read it.
We start with, if you know who's on the phone before it answers, Oh, for goodness sake.
I'll do it for you if you want.
Would you mind?
Yeah. If you know who's on the phone before you answer it, then what?
Not me!
That's it.
Not me!
Yeah. If you know who's on the phone before you answer it, then you're psychic.
Or you've only got one friend.
Yes, that's...
Or you've dialed the speaking clock. And it's rung you back out of pity.
The answer, you might be psychic.
Hey.
Or more likely, you've got caller ID. Next, man 59 refuses to what?
Turn 60.
Refuses to attend seances anymore after Auntie Nellie and Elvis Presley called a hoo-ha.
By Jove!
If that's right, I'm officially psychic.
The answer is, leave house in Downing Street. As he walked out, Gordon snagged his jacket on Mrs Thatcher's fingernails, still embedded in the doorframe. Next, talking pillow, what?
Takes the effort out of pillow talk.
Annoys duvet with unfounded gossip.
It's for students, to help students revise, isn't it?
Hey! This is a pillow containing a speaker which can play students' pre-recorded lectures while they sleep. Next, how to say no to a chimp. What?
You just shake your head. They found a chimp who can mimic human actions.
Well done. The answer is shake your head. Quick chimp head movements mean no, and quick chimp hand movements mean cover your children's eyes. So the final scores are Ian and Julia have 7, Paul and Chris have 8.
Oh, it's a robbery.
It should have been a lot worse,
So does that, in the new era, does that technically mean I've won?
Your deputy winner.
On which note, we say thank you to our panellists, Ian Hislop and Julia Hartley Brewer, Paul Merton and Chris Addison, and I leave you with news that before being accepted by the Conservative Party, Nick Clegg is subjected to one final humiliating public examination. Honk. In a pigsty in Somerset, there's proof that even the most unlikely coalition can work.
Cost a bit of pig and a High Court judge.
After the voting chaos at UK polling stations, a team of international experts flies in to investigate. And as the Tories refuse to agree to the Lib Dem demands to abolish Trident, Ming Campbell decides to do it himself. Good night.
Saturday night stand-up over on BBC One. Rob Brydon and Jason Byrne are live at the Apollo in 10 minutes. Here on BBC Two, Unleashing the Might of the Drummers. I'm in a Rock and Roll Band is next.
I've got Wendy Craig's old dressing room. It's got her initials on the door anyway.